Israel slams as discriminatory the European Union's decision to approve the labeling of settlement products, warning the move could harm relations with Brussels. The Syrian opposition rejects a reported Russian proposal calling for an 18-month constitutional reform process. This as Assad's forces make major gains on the ground. And Republican presidential hopefuls coverage on Milwaukee's for the party's fourth debate, with the candidates taking aim at each other over policy issues.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. The European Union's executive has approved new guidelines for labeling products from the Israeli settlements, a decision Brussels says is technical but which the Israel government has framed as unacceptable discrimination.
The threat has for years been hanging over Jerusalem-Brussels relations, and on Wednesday it became official. The European Union approved the labeling of products from Israeli settlements. The guidelines, in the works since 2012, provide the bloc's members with legal instructions to label the goods, with the aim of informing European consumers that they are made not in Israel, but rather in, quote, occupied territories. European diplomats have tried to downplay the move, describing it as a simple technical matter.
This is not a boycott. I repeat again, this is not a boycott. Because how can it be a boycott if the products are allowed to come onto the market as they have done previously also?
But for Jerusalem, the approval is anything and everything but technical. Israel's foreign ministry immediately issued a statement of condemnation and summoned the EU's ambassador. Jerusalem has repeatedly warned that such a motion will harm not only relations with Brussels, but also the peace process with the Palestinians.
Welcome. Thank you.
Meanwhile, in Washington, the positive momentum generated by what Israeli Premier Netanyahu called the best meeting ever with U.S. President Obama seems to be fading.
Are you willing to tell the Europeans that you think this is a bad idea and that you...
And I'll just leave it at, we're still discussing it with them. They're aware of our views. And then my final observation was that it shouldn't be a surprise to Israel or to anyone that countries are looking at steps that could lead to boycotts or other efforts, given their policy on settlements.
Netanyahu himself released an angry statement saying the EU should be ashamed, calling the move hypocritical.
The labeling of products of the Jewish state by the European Union brings back dark memories. Europe should be ashamed of itself. It took an immoral decision. Of the hundreds of territorial conflicts around the world, it chose to single out Israel and Israel alone, while it's fighting its back against the wall, against the wave of terror.
It confirms the illegality of Israeli settlements. It confirms that Israeli production inside the occupied territories is illegal. And it gives the European person the possibility of boycotting settlement products.
Israel's exports to Europe stand at approximately $18 billion a year, of which less than 1.5% is produced in settlements. But while the economic impact of the decision may be minor, the diplomatic shockwaves are already being felt.
This is a report by the News Today diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg, and I want to welcome here to the studio Ilan Baruch, former Israeli diplomat. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much for coming also. Miri Maoz Ovadia, Director of International Desk at Binyamin Consul. Good evening.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. So,
Mr. Baruch, I want to start with you and ask you why this decision can change anything in the, let's say, atmosphere that we're living here right now, or with the Israel and the international community relationship?
Well, you know, the world, 193 countries, of which only one, Israel itself, is exercising life of its own citizens on a territory that is outside the state of Israel. 192 countries are against it. Europe is against it. The US is against it. And even the state of Israel, now for almost 50 years, failed to annex the territory and call it Israel per se. Now, Europe decided that now enough is enough. It's almost 50 years of occupation, and it should put things in order. And European citizens need to be able to know when they shop which of the products on the shelf are made in Israel and which of the products are made by Israelis outside of Israel in the West Bank and East Jerusalem.
Do you want to answer this?
Yes, I'm just wondering if the next step will be labeling this was made by a Palestinian and this was made by an Israeli, singling between the workers of the factory. I mean, I live in this area. I was born there. My son was born there. I'm a third generation of a family living there. That's my home. And the same feel my neighbors from Dir Nizam, which is the neighboring village. I think that it's important for the region for people to work together, to shop together. That decreases hatred, that allows us to form a normal life side by side. There's no question that Jews and Muslims feel a very strong connection towards these areas. These areas are in dispute, and the dispute is very, very clear. But I think that boycotting and labeling is not the option. Preventing people from their employment and from their possibilities to have a better life, that's just the bad way to go, and that's what this labeling is doing.
Miri, you know, according to the international law, if we're looking at the international law, and Israel should and is bound to international law, Israel is sitting on a property in these areas that are not supposed to be its property. It's the property, it's the land of Palestinians, it's occupied territories, and according to international law, Israel should not be there. Now, on the other side, we know that Israeli governments throughout the years send Israelis to go and live there. Now, my question is, maybe the international community should not be blamed. Maybe the one who should be blamed is the Israeli government for sending thousands and thousands of settlers, thousands and hundreds and thousands of Israeli citizens to live in a property that doesn't belong to it. So
Israel hasn't sent anybody against their will. I live there, that's my choice. I lived in Jerusalem for 2 years, and I made an active choice to go back and live in the hometown, which that's where I grew up, but that was my personal choice. Like me, there's another 400,000 Israelis who came there because of their Jewish connection to these areas, where biblical events took place, where there was Jewish presence for many, many years, where the Jewish community of Hebron came back 400 years ago after they were kicked out of Spain. So I don't think that anybody can deny my personal relationship, connection to this place, which is my homeland. It is true, like I said, that there is a dispute, and if there is any blame for Israel, is that it should have annexed this area a very long time ago. By not annexing, the dispute is continuing. But there's two different levels. There's the official level of what would be the sovereignty, the future of these regions, and that should be solved through any type of official process which goes through negotiation, no unilateral moves. One day, maybe there'll be some kind of decision, and even then, let's say a Palestinian state would be established. I think that it should be a country that gives equal rights for everybody to stay, like Israel respects minorities. If another country would be established in Judea and Samaria or in the West Bank, it should be a country that respects and accepts all the people living there, regardless to their religion.
So if we're looking at this side, and we know that the Israeli government just sent Israelis to live in these lands, from the other side, Israeli government is also allowing Palestinians to go to these places and work in these places and produce these products that the international community is boycotting. What are we going to say, or what? Because when I'm hearing Mustafa Barghouti saying that this is the way to, he is talking also about people from his own region, from the Palestinian territories, who are not going to have a job anymore if they will continue, or somebody will close these.
Yes. Well, I was for 3 years ambassador of Israel to South Africa, and this argument sounds so South African. In the time of apartheid, white people were saying, oh, miserable blacks, they work for us, and if we are boycotted, then the blacks will have no work. That's not the case. The Palestinians should have the work and should have the self-determination and should have their own country. And maybe this is a disputed territory, as Miri is saying, but it is still occupied. By the international law, this is an occupied territory. Jewish communities were not supposed to be there in the first place. And we will need to see, when day comes for a settlement, some of the Jewish communities removed. We know that if we go for the Green Line and swaps, 85% of the Jewish population of the West Bank will stay as is, and the territory will become Israel. But some territory from Israel itself will then be annexed by the Palestinian new state. And we need to see that this current government is doing nothing in this direction, and that is why we, a number of Israelis who issued a petition supporting the European move, are in to encourage the world to re-establish the Green Line, which was erased by the Israeli government in the last 10 years, mostly Netanyahu government, and it needs to be put back.
You know, I will ask, you will answer, and I just want to add another question. When you said Israel should have annexed these territories and give rights to the people, what does it mean? They will become, all the Palestinians living in the West Bank will become citizens of the state of Israel, but you know, by that move, this will put Israel as a Jewish state in danger, and in this way, maybe you bring the end to the Jewish state definition.
Okay. So I want to answer that. The solution that has been on this table and many other tables around the world is a two-state solution. Israel was established in 1948. This territory that we're talking about before 1948 was under the responsibility of the British Mandate. Before that, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. For 20 years, it was occupied by Jordan, if anything. And since 1967, it's been under Israeli rule for almost 50 years. Now, I think that things are changing. We have to be aware of the changing reality. And there's no point sticking to the same supposable two-state solution that was already offered in 1947, rejected then, and rejected many, many, many times since. I'll give another example. The Golan Heights, they're considered occupied by some countries in the world. Occupied from who? From Syria, which is a falling apart country that is butchering, murdering, and raping people over there. So things are changing, and there's no point thinking that what could have been possible in 1948 or in 1967 is relevant today.
But you do see a place where the Palestinians living right now in Ramallah, in Bethlehem, in Nablus, in Jenin, these people, do you see them as an equal citizens of the state of Israel?
They're not citizens
see, like,
yet.
for example, Saeb Arikat becoming the new foreign minister of Israel? This is a little bit, you know.
You're asking, is there going to be a solution of one Israel? No, because that maybe in 1967, if we would have annexed the area, like should happen in my personal opinion, because you need to take responsibility over the population, like happened on the other side of Israel, okay? Like happened in Akko and in Nazareth and in Jaffa. That should have been, but that didn't happen. I know that today in Judea and Samaria, there's a large population, a quarter of it is Jewish, 3/4 are Muslim. These are big numbers. These are not, I don't think that it's moral to move people from place to place as if they were tools. And I think that a more creative solution needs to be figured out that allows everybody to stay where they are, to flourish, to have full rights, definitely, no matter who they are. And obviously they deserve a self-definition, as long as that self-definition doesn't include murdering and getting rid of the other population who has a different national identity. And I just want to say on a personal level, I walk around, I travel a lot between the different areas because I work a lot with tourism. My husband works in construction. We both have colleagues and friends from the area. I think that that's normal. I think that that's positive. I don't see them as blacks or as people that are secondary to me. I have respect to them and they respect me. And I know that they think that us working together, smiling to each other in the morning, knowing what's going on with each other's families, that's normal, that's healthy, that's not bad. And when the international community is trying to destroy that and stop that and create more hatred, I think that that's destructive, and I think that that's not going to bring any peace to the region.
Before I will let you answer to this, I just want to, this exact issue was today a discussion between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and John Kerry. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev is in Washington covering Netanyahu's speech, and she filed the following report about this specific issue.
Well, yes, Lucy, the Israeli Prime Minister is actually sick, and he canceled most of his plans today, but he did squeeze in one last meeting before ending this 3-day visit to the United States, and that is with the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. This is actually a follow-up to the meeting with the president earlier this week. Netanyahu and Kerry mainly discussed confidence-building measures that Israel can take to de-escalate the situation with the Palestinians. We understand from Israeli officials that they're talking mainly about economic steps, but even for that, Netanyahu might need extended political capital. And this visit was the first post-Iran deal visit, but it was largely dominated by the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And in the wake of the EU settlement labeling initiative that was announced today, Netanyahu actually needs the U.S. now, the American support in the international community more than ever to try and brush off these kinds of attempts to internationalize the conflict, just like the EU directives and also other upcoming initiatives at the UN Security Council. So Netanyahu does need this visit to end on a positive tone with the United States to ensure their support in the future.
Yes, that was I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. You want to answer, and I promised.
Yeah, well, I'm very disappointed with the Americans because we, activists for peace, did not find in any of the statements made by President Obama or John Kerry any hint that some interest was expressed from the American administration towards Prime Minister Netanyahu. What are his plans? Because if I hear Miri, and if I think that the plans he has are Miri's plans, because she probably voted for him or for his government, then this is not giving much hope. And I see a lot more hope in a European symbolic move, reviving the Green Line and putting things in order, because even Miri says there are a quarter of the population is Jewish, 3/4 Muslim, and there's a need to somehow settle a good life for everyone. And good life for everyone means that the Muslims and Christians, whoever regards himself Palestinian, they need to have a country of their own. And we will not have peace, and we will have no future, and we will live on our swords, as Mr. Netanyahu said, unless we go through some political process. And it seems that we cannot do this without the world to come and help us.
I want to put something on the table, and I want to ask you, Benjamin Netanyahu went and asked for $50 billion aid. The Americans, he declared, and he said that the meeting was the best meeting ever, which maybe we can understand that the Americans agreed. But I know that when you get in and when you get something, you need to give something back. And some people are saying, and some analysts are saying, that, maybe Benjamin Netanyahu said and agreed on unilateral moves. Maybe Benjamin Netanyahu was agreeing on the two-state solution. And unilateral moves and two-state solution, it means for the settlers, for the people who are living in the West Bank, it means that they will have to make big concessions. How do you see that?
I want to believe that the unilateral moves that he meant did not include uprooting people from their houses, but rather to make Palestinians' lives better in Palestinian cities, with security, with maybe making the trade and marketing easier for them, travel, etc. These are definitely, I would want to see these type of moves, even if they're done unilaterally, because I believe that this is their human rights, and that should happen definitely. That's a good thing, that's positive, and I really do hope that that's what he meant.
Yeah, when us journalists hear unilateral moves, we think, immediately about other unilateral moves that happened in the past, and I don't think that he meant only free of movement.
I just want to respond to that quickly, that having commemorating 10 years to the unilateral move of the disengagement just last summer, I think it was heard on so many different levels and channels from the right and from the left that was one of probably the worst unilateral steps that Israel as a country has taken, and that's probably not going to be something that's going to repeat itself.
Miri Maoz Ovadia, thank you very much for coming. Mr. Ilan Baruch, thank you very much for coming. And we're moving on. Today marks the 11th anniversary of Yasser Arafat's death. Like his Israeli peace partner Yitzhak Rabin, the former Palestinian leader continues to be viewed by some as a man of many contradictions. I-24 News correspondent Ayman Siksik looks back on his life.
Palestinians in Ramallah marked the 11th anniversary of the death of Yasser Arafat on Wednesday, amid growing tensions with Israel. The commemoration coincides with this month's 20th anniversary of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, Arafat's former partner in the peace process. To this day, the loss of Arafat constitutes an open wound for Palestinians.
So many changes happened. If he was still alive, we would have been victorious a long time ago.
Arafat, who signed the Oslo Accords with Israel in 1993, but then led an uprising after negotiations broke down in 2000, left many question marks behind. As Palestinians debate his legacy, his death continues to be a controversial topic. The official cause was a massive stroke, but many still believe Israel was responsible, a charge Jerusalem denies. To mark today's occasion, Hamas symbolically handed over the keys to Arafat's house in Gaza to rival Fatah. Officials from both Palestinian movements, often at odds with one another, called the move a symbolic gesture.
Today is the step of handing over this house to its rightful owners. It will become a center and a museum to the martyr Yasser Arafat.
The movement has received an official letter from Mrs. Suha Arafat and agreed to hand over the house of the foundation of the martyr Yasser Arafat. We consider this a positive gesture.
Though Arafat had a house in Gaza, Ramallah served as his home during his final years, at which time the leader was shunned by Washington for inciting violence among his people. 11 years after his death, peace remains elusive, yet Arafat lives on in the collective memory of Palestinians as a symbol of strong leadership, something many Palestinians believe has been absent since.
Yes, and with me here in the studio is Ali Waqt, Senior Middle East Analyst. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
And also Ashraf al-Ajrami, former Palestinian Minister. Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. al-Ajrami, you know, we sat here just a week ago when we commemorated Yitzhak Rabin's assassination. And I asked you, all the people who were sitting here in the studio, I asked you, what is the legacy that Yitzhak Rabin left? What is the legacy that Arafat left, and what is the legacy that Abu Mazen, that Mahmoud Abbas is planning to leave after he will stop being the president of the Palestinian Authority?
I can speak easily about Yasser Arafat because Yasser Arafat is the father of the Palestinian national movement. Yasser Arafat is the person who established this Fatah movement and PLO and all the nationalist moving in the space of the regional and international era. This is a very important thing to speak now, that without Yasser Arafat nothing can be done, even if we are speaking about Madrid and Oslo and all this process. The establishing of the Palestinian Authority is just because of people like Yasser Arafat, because of his strong personality, of historic record, everything related to him personally. I think he was maybe the suitable person to sign an agreement with the Israelis, and he was also the person who made breakthrough in this process between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
You know, we can talk a lot about Yasser Arafat. We can say that he was a controversial figure, controversial leader. Something we all agree is that he determined the Palestinian narrative. He determined, and when he said something, the Palestinians just stood on their feet and they listened. Today, it's not working like that.
I do absolutely agree with you, Lucy. I want to comment on one Mr. Minister said. I think that the legacy of Arafat is still paralyzing the situation of the Palestinian, whether you look on the positive perspective or on the negative one. Arafat fixed a bar. No Palestinian leader will be ready to sign any political agreement against the bar that Arafat fixed or under the bar that Arafat fixed. What Arafat refused in Taba and in Camp David before, not Abu Mazen, not Muhammad Ahlan, not Marwan Barghouti will be ready to sign, even if the Israelis, even if there is an agreement and the Israeli will market it in a different way, it will be the same criteria of
You know what you're saying? You're saying that
Arafat.
there will be no solution whatsoever if it wasn't what Arafat just put on the table. Whatever Arafat put on the table, it means that he's still alive even after he died.
Absolutely. And this is the legacy of Arafat, that he is alive even if he is not with us. And Mr. Rajami said that he was the most suitable person. I don't see any Palestinian leader that will be capable to address to the Palestinian refugees in Jordan and in elsewhere and to tell them that the right of return in its classical understanding will not be implemented in any peace agreement with Israel. Only Arafat, because he had the charisma and because he has the revolutionary history and because he was among those refugees, was able to do so.
Let's see what the people thought about it. I-24 News took to the streets of Tel Aviv and Ramallah today to ask people how they view Arafat more than a decade after his death.
Arafat wasn't so honest about his intention for peace. I don't know anything about him, so I can't say much about it. I only hope there will be peace.
He was a good man, that's it. He was okay, but he didn't move towards peace.
Yasser
Arafat wouldn't make any peace. The moment he returned to the region, suicide bombing attacks occurred in Jerusalem. It was horrific. He taught his people to act only through the way of slaughter.
Yasser Arafat was a great leader, and he started the Palestinian Revolution, all of it, and founded the PLO.
After Yasser Arafat, so many changes happened. If it was still Arafat's time, we would have been victorious by now.
Yeah, still alive after he died. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time. We're going out for a break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back. Israel slams as discriminatory the European Union's decision to approve the labeling of settlement products, warning the move could harm relations with Brussels. The Syrian opposition rejects a reported Russian proposal calling for an 18-month constitutional reform process. This as Assad's forces make major gains on the ground. And Republican presidential hopefuls coverage on Milwaukee's for the party's fourth debate, with candidates taking aim at each other over policy issues. Yes, and we are back here to the news today, and we are here with you with some breaking news, initial news about an apparent Israeli attack in Syria. Shai Ben Ari, you are here with me about initial reports coming from an Iranian website. We should say that, first details.
Some breaking reports in the past few minutes from Iranian and Syrian media sources, basically mentioning explosions in the vicinity of Damascus International Airport. Some of these reports indeed link these explosions to Israeli airstrikes. Some of them also mention a Syrian truck loaded with 8 tons of explosives to the east of the airport being targeted. This is obviously not not been confirmed by any official source, not to mention Israeli sources. But of course, that in and of itself is not irregular. Israel basically never confirms these kinds of strikes.
Exactly, Israel, and probably Israel won't confirm this.
Even if it is, which we do not know for certain at this stage.
So we are here to talk a little bit about what just happened in Syria just 24 hours ago. Of course, we will continue updating about this specific issue. Russia, Syria, your report.
Scenes of celebration following a landmark battlefield victory by Syrian regime soldiers. On Wednesday, the army finally managed to break the Islamic State siege of Queiroz Air Base in Aleppo province. The military said hundreds of soldiers who had been trapped inside the base for 2 years had been rescued. It is the most significant military victory for President Bashar al-Assad's forces since the beginning of direct Russian intervention in the war. A congratulatory message from the president was read out on state television.
I salute the heroes who remained steadfast for years. I salute the heroes who contributed to ending the siege. And I salute every soldier in the Syrian army, for he is a brother or son to us.
On the diplomatic front, the Reuters news agency published the contents of an 8-point Russian draft document outlining a vision for a political settlement in Syria. 4 of the 8 points deal with the Islamic State and the need to continue the ongoing international effort against it.
First, there is a necessity to agree on a list of terrorist organizations so that no one has any doubts or hesitations on the affiliation of this or that armed group.
Another point calls for the launch of a constitutional reform process in Syria to last 18 months and to be headed by an agreed-upon person other than Assad. A referendum is then to be held on the constitution, followed by national elections. The document, however, does not rule out Assad running in those elections, nor him remaining in power until then. The document also envisions a unified, secular, and democratic Syria. A representative for the Syrian National Coalition, a moderate opposition group, ruled out the proposal, noting that elections held under Assad's rule could not be fair. The Russians have in the meantime backed away from the draft, saying they only have, quote, ideas for future discussions.
Okay, and joining me again here is Shai Ben-Ari, I24 News military correspondent. Let's talk. I need to understand. Nobody is satisfied, never, because no matter what they are being offered, Syria is being offered, it's never, Assad is not confirmed, the opposition is not satisfied with it. Nobody's, even in this proposal, okay, let's wait 18 months, let's see, let's try. They're not satisfied with it. What is exactly happening here?
What's the deal? Well, this paper, which may very well have been leaked by the Russians, is being described by some as something of a trial balloon to actually gauge the reaction of the international community to these ideas. As mentioned in the report, the paper has been rejected by the Syrian moderate opposition so far because it does not rule out Assad running in the elections. It does not rule him out remaining in power during the transition period. Interestingly, the U.S. response has not been that negative, actually, though it was very initial. The State Department spokesman, Mark Toner, said yesterday, it's along the lines of what we're looking for, interesting, which is a political transition, but the details remain to be worked out with, among others, the Syrian opposition, of course. No mention, of course, of the problems in that response with the Assad issue. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something different from John Kerry, who is scheduled to speak on that issue tomorrow. We may be hearing a different approach.
Or you will hear something different also from Russia, of course, which is also not... but this is the first, let's say, process. You know, yesterday we are seeing also that Assad is gaining a big momentum. And this is thanks to who? Thanks to the Russians, thanks to the Americans, and of course, after him gaining such power, he won't be able to step down very quickly.
Right. You know, many people are linking this latest conquest of this air base near Aleppo to the Russian intervention. But it has to be said, the Russian intervention has been going on for a few months now, and this is really the first major achievement on the ground that you can talk about as a landmark, really. And it has to be said, the pressure remains on the Assad regime itself. Only yesterday, on Tuesday, basically, there were 2 big explosions in Latakia, perhaps Assad's major stronghold today, with 23 people killed and at least 40 injured, this linked to rocket fire. The rebels are close enough to fire rockets, very deadly rockets, and kill this many people to his strongest and the biggest bastion he has in the Alawite region. So we're talking about a lot of pressure still on Assad, even today. even with these conquests near Aleppo.
So let's just sum up for us, please, Shai. The last events that we started this part of the edition with it's with an apparent Israeli strike in Syria.
Right, we're talking about explosions in the vicinity, apparently to the east of Damascus International Airport. Further updates in the past few minutes mentioned that this may very well have been some sort of arms shipment to Hezbollah. Of course, that is something that Israel has been very open about. It is not willing to accept the transfer of advanced weaponry to Hezbollah, to organizations that have the capacity to harm it. These kinds of weapons would be perhaps the kind of basically an excuse to carry out such an attack. Of course, no confirmation so far from any Israeli source, official source, and we don't expect it to be forthcoming in any case.
Yeah, of course, just even if you're waiting for a confirmation, just make sure that you have a chair next to you. Shai Ben-Ari, thank you very much for this. Yes, and we're going to Spain. Spain's government had filed an appeal with the Constitutional Court as it seeks to invalidate a move by the Catalonian Assembly to press ahead with independence. Catalonia's regional parliament voted on Monday to start a process towards secession with the aim of forming a republic within 18 months. Left-wing parties ousted Portugal's ruling centre-right on Tuesday in the first such move against an elected government since the end of the dictatorship in 1974. It paves the way for a socialist-led administration to end years of austerity. I-24 News correspondent Michal Dibon examines the political shakeup.
Less than 2 weeks after taking power, Portugal's government has been toppled by a new left-wing bloc.
A taboo has ended, a wall has fallen, preconception has been overcome. Here at this national parliament, we are all different in our ideas, but we are all equal in our legitimacy.
Passos Coelho's centre-right coalition won most votes on an October 4th election and was sworn into office last week by the president. But in an unexpected move, the three left-wing parties that make a majority in parliament agreed to put deep ideological differences behind them and group together to get rid of the centre-right. They voted 123 to 107 against the administration's program, prompting its collapse. Outside Parliament, as the debate went on, supporters of Passos Coelho cheered in favor of the government. The centre-right warned that a retreat on austerity could put Portugal on a similar path to Greece.
A government that is not yet in charge, and we already have investors' suspicions shown in the enlargement of public debt spreads and in the credit default swaps that measure the risk of default of the public debt.
Meanwhile, the left celebrated the chance to raise incomes that were cut during the financial crisis, cut taxes, and protect social benefits. The socialists insist they would respect European Union budget rules, as returning incomes to households should boost the economy. But many economists have questioned their plans. Portugal's president, Aníbal Cavaco Silva, must now decide either to ask the socialists to form a new government or to allow the incumbents to stay in charge until new elections are held.
And with me right now is Bruno Horta, Portuguese freelance journalist. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hello.
So, Bruno, you're with me?
I am.
Yes. So, Bruno, let's start. I need to understand what paved the way exactly to this impeachment, let's say, or ousted of the right center party.
We don't know exactly what paved the way to this solution. The fact is that since 1974, since the democracy returned to Portugal, the communists never had a good relationship with the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party was the second party in the election we had in the beginning of October. But the winner was exactly the coalition of the center of right coalition, and the coalition won the election. But the fact is that now the Socialist Party, that is a center left party, joined forces with the communists for the first time since 1974, and with another party that is composed by former communists. And this paved the way to this solution. So yesterday, this Thursday, the government that was elected was ousted, and now we have probably a new government, but we have to wait for the decision of the president. We are still waiting for that decision.
Bruno, I want to ask you something. You know, austerity was a key word in the elections that were held in Greece. And after a left party was managed to succeed in the elections, it didn't came out in a very, let's say, successful way. What are the chances that right now we will see really a shift in the government, really a shift in the economy, and this exactly, or this move, this is the move that will bring the change to Portugal?
Well, first of all, we have to wait for the decision of the president, because the president has at least 3 solutions. He may choose this new government, this left government, this left proposal. He may maintain the government that was ousted, doing just current management. But he also has the power to create himself a government that is not based on the election outcome. But as far as we are hearing from the socialists and this new coalition that is being formed, is that they want to respect the European rules that are applied to Portugal, but we are not sure whether they can do that. So we are not sure what will happen in the next days, in the next weeks here in Portugal. We are not sure if this new political solution will be will have success in terms of the European rules.
Yes, Bruno Horta, thank you very much for this update for us. And we're going to the United States. 8 Republican presidential hopefuls took to the stage in Milwaukee last night for the party's 4th debate. Unlike the last one, the focus was primarily on issues, giving the candidates chance to outline their policies. ABC News has more.
Overnight, the Republicans battling to be president, making their case on the economy and national defense. The debate, more policy.
Marco, how is it conservative?
But some punches.
How is it conservative to add $1 trillion in military expenditures?
We can't even have an economy if we're not safe. There are radical jihadists in the Middle East beheading people and crucifying Christians. A radical Shia cleric in Iran trying to get a nuclear weapon. The Chinese taking over the South China Sea. Yes, I believe the world is a safer... No, I don't believe. I know that the world is a safer and better place when America is the strongest military power in the world.
All of the candidates rallying against the IRS.
There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible. And not a one of them is as good.
And Dr. Ben Carson, a leading candidate, slamming the news coverage of alleged discrepancies in his life story.
I have no problem with being vetted. What I do have a problem with is being lied about.
On the economy, the retired neurosurgeon appearing to change his position on raising the minimum wage.
I would not raise it.
But back in May, Carson favored increasing it. I asked him about the change.
So just to be clear, are you in favor of raising the minimum wage, or you're not in favor of it?
I personally am not in favor of it, but I'm in favor of having the discussion, because I believe that the way you do something in a pluralistic society is you put it out in the open so that everybody understands what's going on.
Donald Trump at one point playing referee, criticizing Carly Fiorina for cutting people off.
Why does she keep interrupting everybody?
Yeah. Boy. And fighting for Jeb Bush to get a chance to speak.
You should let Jeb speak.
We have grown.
Thank you, Donald, for allowing me to speak at the debate. That's really nice of you. Really appreciate that. What a generous man you are.
But later, Bush clashed with Trump over immigration, refusing to support mass deportation of undocumented immigrants.
It's just not possible. And it's not embracing American values. And it would tear communities apart. And it would send a signal that we're not the kind of country that I know America is.
And to talk about that and what we just saw is Mark Tell, co-chair of Republicans Abroad Israel. Good evening.
Lucy.
Good to have you here.
Lovely to be here.
As always. And Charles Bibbles, our deputy editor for the News Today. Good
Lucy,
evening.
thanks for having me.
Okay, so the headline, if I need to take a headline from what we just saw from yesterday's debate, is Jeb Bush out, Rubio still in, and Donald Trump, of course, is all over, just all over.
I think you're a little bit premature, Lucy.
Why?
We're still a long way off. Jeb Bush has a lot of staying power. He didn't do well last night. He didn't do badly. No one really did badly.
But the polls are not like playing.
But let's also put the polls in perspective. Right now, it's kind of like a popularity contest. Most people who look at these numbers understand, believe, maybe hope, okay, I put myself in that category, that when the actual voting takes place beginning 1st of February, the voters will vote for candidates who are not simply protest figures, but who have the ability to actually be president. And as much as I respect Ben Carson and even Donald Trump for his marketing ability, and he's got that, I don't believe that either of those gentlemen, with all due respect, can be president of the United States. I could be wrong, but I think the nominee for our party will likely come from the next tier: Rubio, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush possibly, who's not out of it, Kasich from Ohio. I mean, we have a long list of possible candidates, and what's really nice about this process, Lucy, is that millions of Americans, I read just this morning that 24 million Americans watched this debate again. That's incredible.
24 million Americans are watching these debates each and every time that the Republicans are taking the stage.
And the Democrats have half. You know, so it's really quite something.
It's not nice, Mark.
Sorry, look, I'm just reporting the facts. That's what you do, right?
But Sheldon is not here to answer. Okay, the polls, numbers. Give me. Jeb is not. It's not working good for him.
It's not working well for him. He's now a third-tier candidate. Like Mark said, you have the anti-establishment figures, Trump and Carson. Then you have Cruz, Rubio, and to a degree Bush. But I think he's slid down to the 6-7% category. Some polls still it depends which polls. But the RCP average of the national polls, he's below both Cruz and Rubio. That being said, I'm starting to become a little bit suspect of the polls. A lot of these polls are conducted over a number of days, and given how much the contest has changed and how dramatically it's changed over the course of the last 2 weeks with 2 debates, the Carson scandal, the Rubio scandal, etc., I'm not convinced that people's opinions are keeping up with the facts. So I've seen things all over the place. I saw a Reuters Ipsos poll that put Trump at 31% and Carson at 18%. There was a McClatchy poll that came out that put 24% Carson, 23% Trump. I'm waiting a little bit on the polls, but I do tend to agree with Mark that more and more I am looking for an establishment figure from the second tier to start making a move, like Rubio, for example, in New Hampshire.
You know, I want to just take this specific debate and to discuss it because the candidates really prepared themselves this time. They prepared themselves for maybe hard questions from the media because they had their share and they said their share about what they think about the media. And this time they really, really got into the issues. They really went head-to-head about the approach. What do you think about each and every one of them and the way that they see how they can lead the United States and policy issues?
Well, look, I think last night's debate was really interesting. I know you felt it may have been a little boring. I didn't think so.
Substance is boring in this type.
Well,
when you have this,
some people would use the word wonky. I think it was really interesting. I think they really dealt with substantive issues, primarily in the economic area, but they did touch upon some foreign policy issues that are of concern to us here. I'd say Rubio did a great job, as he usually does. He's very quick on his feet, and he has a very clear message. Cruz also did very, very well. The other people, I mean, Trump and Carson didn't self-destruct, so they're still in the game. As we talked about Jeb Bush already, who was, mediocre. Some, like Carly Fiorino, for example, I think overdid it. And she actually became a little bit irritating at times. As did Kasich. Yes, I also agree. The guy that we haven't talked about is the first debate, the one that no one really likes to talk, the JV, right, or the cocktail hour debate. There, Governor Christie from New Jersey, was in his own world. He really did a great job, and I would hope he comes back to the major leagues for the next debate.
You know, at the beginning of this race, Chris Christie looked like really one of the, let's say, front runners in this race. And somehow, during maybe the Trump phenomena, he was left out. He was left out by really not likable figures. How come?
It's ironic because I think Chris Christie is a likable figure. He's also a much more of a moderate. That being said, being in the JV debate, he's polling on average less than 2.5%. So there isn't a lot of traction. But as you saw in the first debate, Fiorina as well was in the lower tiered debate, and she flourished there and got a big boost in the polls. She hasn't been able to maintain that momentum. I agree with Mark that she's fallen back a lot. But Christie's a seasoned politician with a lot of experience and, in my opinion, a lot of appeal. And if he continues to do well, he can build a grassroots infrastructure and maybe compete in the early primary states. Not too late.
No, I think his problem is basically he was scandal-ridden. You know, he had the whole story with the Fort Lee Bridge affair. There's talk about possible legal entanglements that awaiting him. So as adept a politician as he is, and he is quite skilled, I think he's going to have a difficult time getting traction. But of course, a lot of what's going on here in these debates, that we're a year away from the elections, is a positioning for the vice president's spot, other cabinet positions. And there's that aspect too.
I think that I'm going to have a lot of quality time with you guys in the next 12 months. Thank you very much.
Lucy, always a delight to be here.
Always a delight having you here. Kana'eh HaGalil is a small road in the center of Jerusalem where Jews and Arabs live side by side and maintain good relations. Despite the latest escalation in Israeli capital, I-24 News correspondent Ori Shapira found a little place of hope in the divided city.
The current wave of violence has placed Jerusalem squarely at the center of the flames. Tensions have been heightened as a delicate balance between Arabs and Jews in the Israeli capital is in jeopardy. It is difficult to find anywhere in the city where coexistence is still evident. Hard, but not impossible. Welcome to Kana'eh HaGalil Street. On this street there are 4 barber shops, a community center, and even a boutique ice cream shop. But the main significance of this road is undoubtedly the unique relationship between its Arab and Jewish residents.
My family has lived here for around 100 years, so we know all of our neighbors. We are all friends. There is good chemistry between us, a good connection.
The street is located in the Pat neighborhood, only a few meters from the Arab neighborhood of Bet Safafa. Prior to 1967, the neighborhood was divided between Israel and Jordan. After Israel conquered the city, many Arab residents remained living side by side their Jewish neighbors. It has even become an attraction for people outside the neighborhood.
People here are kind and have good taste, and they are not greedy. I prefer to leave my neighborhood and come here to do my business.
A few streets away is the bilingual Hebrew-Arabic school, sabotaged in a Jewish hate crime. When asked who's to blame, residents gave a surprising answer.
I blame everything on the internet. The internet will destroy the world.
This road seems like an island of sanity in the troubled city of Jerusalem. But for the people of Kana'eh HaGalil, it's simply routine. While other parts of the city burn, this small street offers a case study of how things might be slightly different.
And with me right now is Natalie Ehrlich, host of I-24 News Economy Magazine. Welcome back. You've been abroad.
Right.
Yes. So let's talk about 2 Israelis and the United States national charged with largest cyber hacking.
right? This is one of the largest cybercrimes ever recorded. Now, these three men are said to be responsible now for breaching into 12 firms, including J.P. Morgan. Remember that huge data breach that we saw against J.P. Morgan last year. And something really interesting to note here, to keep in mind the size and the scope of this scheme. The Attorney General in New York and Manhattan said that it was simply breathtaking. Now, what they did essentially here was steal, through those breaches, steal the information of 100 million people. And then one of their most lucrative businesses was essentially a stock penny scheme where they essentially inflated penny stocks, this pump and dump scheme where they essentially inflated penny stocks and then sold consumers these artificially inflated stocks using the information that they had stolen, and then were said to have made about $100 million out of this, which was found in Swiss bank accounts. Now, these two Israelis face extradition to the United States, and one, of course, is an American citizen and is clearly with the authorities at the moment.
Of course, probably we will continue to hear more about this, but let's talk about Alibaba and the day of shopping. Did you shop?
I didn't shop, but I should have. I shopped at Duty Free because I was away. As you know, it's a good time to shop. But anyway, there is some good news out there for the world. We have been watching China, the world's #2 economy, really falter, especially in the summer here. And Alibaba, which is the eBay of China, they had record sales. Can you guess how much that they were able to make during the sales day within the first 8 minutes?
What? This is amazing.
$1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yes.
$1 billion. 8 minutes.
Yes.
Amazing. And Natalie Ehrlich, thank you very much for this.
Thank
you. Okay, we're going out for a break. Update from our news desk, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. Welcome back to the news today. Israel is facing a growing challenge. On Tuesday, 2 Palestinian miners stabbed a security guard on a light rail car in Jerusalem. It came just weeks after 13-year-old Ahmed Manasra and his teenage cousin went on a stabbing spree of their own in the same neighborhood. In the wake of that attack, unflattering footage surfaced of Israeli security officials interrogating Manasra.
هو هرب وانت وراه مع سكاكين هيك كل واحد مع سكينه هيك وراه ليش؟ مش متذكر ومش عارف شو يعني مش متذكر انت؟ ما انت شفت حالك بالفيديو شفت حالك بالفيديو ليش عملت هذا الشيء؟ شفت حالي بس مش متذكر شو كان في ايدكم؟ انا قلت لك مزبوط كلام شو كان في ايدكم؟ قلت لك انه مزبوط ايش؟ سكين خلاص قلت لك خلاص قلت لك مزبوط كل اللي بتحكوه ايش بدك خلص بس ما اقدرش اجاوبكوا على شيء ثاني كل شيء بتحكوه صح لانه انا ناسي بس ليش؟ انا ناسي ليش شو بالسكينه؟ ناسي مشان الله ناسي اما ودوني اذكر شوفوا اذا بتذكر شوفوا ناسي انا ناسي كل شيء.
Yes, the question many are now asking is how should Israel deal with youths who perpetrated potentially deadly attacks? Joining me to discuss are Gonen Ben Yitzchak, former Shin Bet agent. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. And Dr. Hani Zubaydah, professor of political science at the Israel Valley College. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. You've been, Gonen, in these kinds of, not this specific, but interrogating terrorists and interrogating adults. And I'm seeing the way that, you know, I think that this phenomena is something that Israel wasn't maybe anticipating, wasn't actually thinking that it would get to a point that it will interrogate a 13-year-old boy. Is this the way to interrogate a 13-year-old boy from your perspective?
I'm looking at this video. It doesn't look good, and I don't think it serves any good purpose, because, you know, this boy went to do something terrible. I think if Israel wants to try and find a way to stop it, we need to understand what the hell is going on. Why such young kids are going from their homes, from their schools, to kill Israelis. I don't think this is the way, you know, to shout at him, to get some obvious answer, just because the media and the public wants to see, this young boy going to prison. It doesn't serve anything.
I'm trying to think, basic psychology. To talk with a boy, to yell at a boy when you are coming to your son, and you know that your son did something wrong. To yell at him, it's not the way to make him understand that he did something wrong. This is basic, I think, basic psychology.
Well, the situation here is a completely different scenario. First, let's put that in perspective. The chief of the Israeli Internal Security said, well, not only him, but also the chief of Israeli military intelligence said that the problem with these children is not nationalistic. There is no issue of Palestinians versus Israelis. There's an issue of hope, and both of them use the word hope. Now, when a 13-year-old child does something which is misdemeanor, let's assume he stole a bike, and a police officer will arrest him, most likely he will not get that treatment, because usually 13-year-old kids do some stupid things. This child stabbed somebody. The first thing I would imagine would be assigned to him is a children's psychologist with somebody who specializes in children interrogation, not somebody who's masculine, overriding him, screaming on him, trying to get the obvious. I think that what we saw right there was a scene of a police officer or somebody who's used to interrogating people and getting information, and getting information out of them, but 18-year-old. Now, my esteemed colleague said that people want to see this child in prison, but this will not happen because according to Israeli law, they're not liable to what they do. Moreover, according to Israeli laws, police officer or any person cannot interrogate somebody below the age of 16 without a representative either of the family, lawyer, or child services. So this entire scene is very problematic, and I think, again, you framed it right. This entire ordeal caught Israel in a surprise. We don't really know what to do with these minors who perpetrate these things.
Gunan, I'm trying to think about the image that these young children have on Jewish people. They are used to think that Jewish people are the enemy. They are used to think about Jewish people who are the people who are coming and killing them and occupying their land. They're not seeing the good Jewish man or the good Jewish woman who want peace, who want something for his benefit. And when somebody is trying to take out a confession from a child acting like that, this is basically putting the image of the bad Jew in his mind.
Well, yeah, in this situation, after this young boy, I'm talking to you, and I try to remember that we're talking about a young boy, a child. I'm saying boy, a child. And
let's not forget that this child took a knife, he stabbed innocent people, he committed a murder, but a child who who is not scared to go out and stab people, he's not afraid of dying. He's not afraid of anything, maybe.
You know what? I'm not sure. I don't really know, and I think that, again, we need to try and understand what's going on with those children, and what Dr. Zbeda said about having a psychologist in interrogation. This is exactly what we need to do, because we need to understand what is this psychological set, or what is this psychological environment that pushes those children to do it. Even for me, as a father for a 12 years old, almost, a child, I heard today about a child the same age going on a train to stab Israelis. I don't understand. With all my knowledge and all the things I know about terrorism, I find myself with no answers about what's going on.
I'm trying to think, if you would have been in this situation, how would you approach this?
Well, first of all, it's very important to understand I was not an interrogator in the Shin Bet. I was a handler. My first degree is in psychology, so maybe, I don't know, maybe I would have some intuition to go and speak to someone like this. And again, it's really hard to say because I just don't know.
You know, I'm hearing Gonen and I'm seeing how Gonen, and we know Gonen from being the handler of Mus'ab Youssef, and the story that came and how difficult this story is. And, you know, I respect greatly what he has done and what he is doing, and I'm seeing Gonen not able to start understanding this. How would the security, or how is Israel planning to can deal with this phenomenon?
What Gonen is saying, and I fully agree, we lack the understanding of the entire psychological mode of a child that takes a knife and goes on to stab somebody else. Gonen argues, and I agree with him as a subtext, if I see somebody who's 19, 20, 21 years old who understands the consequences of taking a knife and going on stabbing somebody, he might take lives, and on the other hand, he might be killed. That's a whole different story, because then you have some knowledge of the world, good and bad, black and white, action and reaction. A 13-year-old child, and we both have children about the same age, I assume mine is 10-year-old, he does not have the basic understanding of what it means to take a knife and stab someone, let alone the fact that this child, I think this is the one, saw his friend being gunned by other people. So he now, in the midst of the screaming, and you did that, and you took the knife, and so on, he needs to figure out, I killed someone, and my friend who was with me was killed due to the reaction to our action. This whole ordeal is being compacted into the scene, which is brutal to everybody there, including the officer who interrogated him.
Let's put this in the perspective of the lives in the Palestinian territories and in the West Bank. People, these young children, these youth are walking down their streets and they are seeing the posters of martyrs. They are seeing the respect that martyrs are getting, and they don't have, let's say, after-school activity. They don't have the life that, and you know what? I won't compare it to an Israeli Jewish boy. I will compare it to an Israeli Arab boy. They don't have the ability or the capability to have the life of an Israeli Arab kid inside Israel. They don't have a future. You know, once I had an encounter with a 16-year-old boy from the Palestinian territory, and I asked him, you don't have a dream? You don't want to be something when you will grow up? And his answer was to me, we're not allowed to dream. We cannot dream. And this is something that the Israeli Jewish society inside Israel now doesn't have the atmosphere to understand that.
I totally agree with you, and I think that the lack of hope is something that, you know, this is the biggest threat among youngsters, not only in the Palestinian territory. When we talk about the renaissance of Islam in the Middle East, why do we say it? We say it because youngsters, they don't have any hope, and they find some false hope in the idea of the Islamic State, ISIS, and so on. What we see here, from my point of view, is maybe connected to the idea of Daesh, because young children, they sit on the computer, they don't have much to do, they're not going, you know, to any hobby or anything after school. They read Twitter, they read the Facebook, they see, you know, posts about martyrs, they don't have hope, and they think by mistake that, you know, this is the hope, to see people taking their life and taking other life, and this is really cool. They lack the understanding of what is.
There's no legibility. There's no concept of what they're doing. Their concept is completely twisted. In order to have a concept of right and wrong, you need to have some set of mores and values that will substantiate a base to build the mores. They do not have it. They lack it. They don't have schools that are in order. They don't have a system of mores and values that are right. And eventually what we see is a complete break of their system.
I want to take you, but because if we have this conversation right now on an Israeli media, on an Israeli channel, the amount of complaints that we will get from Israeli viewers saying, how do you understand? This is a murderer, he is a terrorist, we should not understand or have any understanding towards terrorists. Also, the Israeli ambiance for this entire situation is not something that you can even think that you can give these kids hope, or you can give the other side some kind of hope to deal with in order not to go out and have this.
There was a guy back in the days in a band named Police, and then he had a song, and he was talking about nuclear armament and nuclear disarmament, and his name was Sting, and his song entitled "If the Russians Loved Their Children Too." I think that what happened here is a complete detachment and dehumanization of the Israelis and of the Palestinians. Both sides dehumanized each other. And I think our only hope is that if each side loves their children, they need to understand that we cannot even discuss detachment here. We need to talk about attachment and about having the same norms, mores, and values. Because any other way would bring eventually Israeli children will start attacking Palestinian children. And that's not the outcome we want. Definitely there's something wrong with the Israeli atmosphere, ambient, as you called it today, and we need to do something to overcome this hurdle.
Gunnar, did you see it coming?
Well, I didn't see it coming. If we are talking about children going to stab Israelis, I didn't see it coming. I did see this kind of riots or whatever we call it coming. You know, I had an interview a few months ago, and I said, you know, the idea of Daesh is existing in Jerusalem, and it's a matter of time that people will go and do something about it. And I think 2 months later, we started to see the stabbing attacks in Jerusalem and all over Israel. It's not a surprise if you follow what's going on again in the Middle East, and the fact that within the Palestinian territory there is no hope. We are talking about the word hope, but we don't have it. You know, even in Israel, I have to say, even in Israel, people are losing their hope. People are losing their hope. We are talking now, you know, about all this natural gas scheme and everything. I'm talking with the people, Ethiopians. People feel that, you know, they can't change their destiny, and when they feel that they can't change their destiny, and suddenly there is some false power like ISIS coming and saying, no, we have a solution. Okay, Islam ul hal. There is a solution. The Islam is the perfect, the radical Islam. Then people are very happy. They don't understand this is a lie.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for this conversation with me. And thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we'll be here again at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have peace. Have a great night.